ho 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 and all that crap.
I'm Bill Hurd.
And I'm Fran Blanche.
And my hat's defective. We're back.
We're back, baby.
Yes.
This is our 2014 holiday special. We're gonna like reminisce and go all nostalgic.
Talk about old toys.
We're gonna go all nostalgic on you. Yeah.
Vintage.
Thinking about the most awesomest stuff that we got when we were kids, and really, how the stuff that changed our lives.
Yeah. Or led to a career in my case. One of my toys.
Yeah. Well, so Heathkit.
Yes.
Everybody who was a hobbyist in the 70s, 60s, they wanted a Heathkit for the holidays. That was like, and so, when did you know about Heathkit when it was?
I'd say not when I was like 10. No, I knew about when I was 16 maybe.
How did you find out about it? Did you? Because I don't think it was advertised.
It is. I had like an Allied Electronics catalog. I had a Radio Shack. So you try to find these, and you had to send away for the catalogs and things.
Yeah, the catalog, which when you would get it in the mail, it would be like this.
Yeah. Original
Heathkit, 1979, winter catalog.
I was already in the Army 2 years when that.
Well, it was a little.
Oh,
yeah.
But I remember Piaia, P-I-A-I-A. They made little synthesizer kits.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in basic training, I was getting the catalogs for those, and the drill sergeants would look at me funny as they'd hand this thing. It had a synthesizer picture hand drawn on it and stuff.
Well, look, you can build your own television and VTR. See, they have their own VTR
Guaranteed
system.
to be the worst looking TV that you ever.
Oh. Well, when I got my first Heathkit, I didn't know how to solder. I didn't know how to, I didn't know anything about assembling electronics. And so the way it worked back then is if you bought a Heathkit for someone, they would get like a free lesson. It came with it was like part of the deal with the first purchase.
Some unhappy guy showed up to show you how to.
My mom took me to the Heathkit store, which was Northwest Philly, back in the late 70s, and I got my soldering lesson, and they had a big showroom where they had stuff assembled, but then they had this room in the back where they had about a dozen really grizzled, unhappy guys shoved back there.
You didn't call them trolls, but you
but it was troll-like because no one smiled, no one was talking. They were just sitting at these cramped workstations with TVs and oscilloscopes.
Fixing other people's problems.
Yes, because as I discovered, because I kind of asked, what do you, this is like you sell kits, what are these people doing? And the guy explained that, almost everything that they sold came back, not working.
Right.
So, people would buy a television or the H8 computer or, something that they wanted, and they bought it as a kit, and they'd spend weeks or months putting it together, and it just wouldn't work, or they'd turn it on and it would blow it up.
Yeah.
And so they had piles of stuff in there. And when I'm getting my soldering lesson, I'm like, well, I'm surprised that people would buy this stuff and not know how to put it together. And he told me that a guy had, I guess, that winter had bought a kit, put it together, and it brought it back, complained it didn't work. Well, he said, well, I've checked everything. I'm sure I've assembled it right. I've checked every component. I did everything right. So he left the whatever it was, and so the technician opened it up, and sure enough, it was methodically put together. The joints were all in place. All the wires were in the right place. All the components were right. But the guy, he didn't know how to solder, so he had just used Elmer's glue. He'd used Elmer's glue to meticulously glue all of the joints. So all of the joints where the wires were on the sockets, and
probably some of it worked, just not all of it.
Well, he was looking at the diagram where they show like cross-cut of how a good solder joint looks, and he duplicated that with glue, and so he thought, well, it looks perfect, and so the whole thing had been glued together with white glue.
And how would you know if they didn't show a picture of something burning your finger as an indication of the danger of a soldering iron?
Apparently, nowhere in the manual did it say that you have to use solder.
Right?
So yeah.
We were just talking about that last night. Remember when toys were dangerous? Like
Yeah.
creepy people, creepy crawlers.
Creepy crawlers.
They had a heated element, and you pour the goop in the mold, set it right in there, and you pick it out. You just burn the piss out of your hand. I had scars all over my arms.
The plastic injection molding thing. Yeah, my cousin
wood
had
burning
one.
sets.
Oh yeah, my cousin had one that made cars. It made like Matchbox cars.
Right.
And it was it heated up to like 400
it
degrees
actually
or
did
something.
some compression in there.
And you put like it was like you put like a cylinder of plastic, and then there was like a big like lever,
plunger or something.
Like a big lever, and you pull out this.
Give me the right place to stand, and I'll make a Matchbox car.
Molten car out of it. It was like 400 degrees. Well, actually, that leads to one of my favorite toys of all time, which is bring the spin welder, baby. I now people have watched my videos. They know that I did a friction welder, but this is what it comes from. It comes from the spin welder, and these were real kits that you could get and put in the hands of a 10-year-old, and
who became the spin doctor.
Exactly, and so you got blueprints, blueprints, and
you can tell it's a blueprint because it's blue.
Yeah, and you get all the girders and welding sticks and rivets and the spin welder.
Right.
And this is the thing is, for youngsters who are watching this, who maybe are used to your Arduinos and stuff. Well,
or have lawyers of your own. Yes.
So, what do you think? Power source this would connect to. You see,
I'm thinking 120 volts AC.
Well, you see there, it's got a handle and everything. Well, that might be a good guess, and you could try that, and then, you'd have to go out and buy another spin welder.
Yeah.
But, it's sort of antiquated.
There's a plus and a minus.
Yep. Lantern battery.
You can't even buy. Have you tried to buy one of these that aren't full of just other little batteries?
Well, they're all full of little batteries now, but that's what makes them so versatile and fun.
You buy a lantern from even Sears, and the battery costs more than a lantern does by a factor of 2 to 1 or 3 to 1.
Because
those things are like $10 each. Last I saw.
Yeah, well,
and they don't work.
Sometimes when you open these up, they're C cells, and sometimes they're A cells. But
when we were young, they were just stacks of carbonish things and stuff. Right?
Okay, so lantern battery, the springy terminals, it kind of goes like this.
You can tell I was in the military, but when you
there you go.
This means I'm not pointing the gun at you.
See, you just kind of see. I get this right. Okay.
Well, if it's backwards, it'll just go the wrong way.
Exactly, but no, the handles to pull it into the coil. See?
So it's not really an emergency release in case things go horribly wrong.
Well, no. Well, things always go horribly wrong.
Yeah, it starts getting welded to everything. It's
no, you take the little claws, and they kind of just jam it into the springs. This is 70s tech. There you go. Now it's in. There you go. Now you're like weld city.
Now you're welding.
Over? Oh wow! Look at that. So yeah. So there's the connector. See, you just slide it into the, and you need a handle to really push that in. And then these are the girders. They just kind of come like model kit. I'm gonna get a girder. I'm breaking new old stock. This is like new old stock. I'm actually breaking it out. So here we go.
You know how many dinosaurs died to make that?
Yeah, quite a few. Okay, so I guess we'll try and weld together.
Do you need me to hold something?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see if this is. Oh, it's flowing.
This is the speed the dentist drill used to run at back then.
Oh, we got a good bead.
Yeah. Remember, you'd hear the dentist drill actually bog down in your tooth and.
Okay. Right there. Okay.
Yeah, it looks
Ready?
good on TV.
Here we go. It's hard to control at this angle. There you go. Running all over.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit like stick welding, where you just have to.
You want to try that weld?
So you can see it doesn't come off.
Look at that. It works. Wow. So we actually welded beams with a toy.
Which I remember heating up a lot of things and making them smoke and stuff, but this was the first one. I got to say that that's actually what you were supposed to do.
Well, this is the other part of it. You also have these rivets, and where you could actually take it's like this little rivety thing. So there's a rivet, and I'm trying to put a rivet on. There we go. New old stock. Worth its weight in palladium. Oh, there you go. You want to try riveting? The idea is just keep it in place until it flows. There you go. And then stop. Oop,
Whoops, I pulled it away too soon. Oh well.
You can hit it again. But you let it stop, and then just let it set. And then you can pull it away. Oh! Yeah! Rivet. Works. Zoom in on that one. So.
This turns out to be the reason the Titanic went down, is they turned out that the plastic weld rivets they used in the nose had a different slag amount, and in the cold water they failed. Yeah,
so Mattel, I guess, is to blame for that.
Yeah.
But there you go. Riveting and welding. I mean, you can imagine. I gotta move my mic back. I mean, you can imagine how awesome that would be. You know,
right?
You're a kid and you're welding,
yeah.
and you weld together some kind of machine.
Yeah.
You know, early in the morning in your
create
jammies.
Something as long as it's right angle plastic with.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole. I mean, the kit comes with the blueprints. So, like you follow the blueprints, and it shows you how to weld the whole thing together. It's like actual prints. So it's like a model kit, but welding. So anyway, that's definitely one of my picks for the most awesome.
When did you first get exposed to electronics?
Well, actually, it was sort of by accident. I was just tinkering together stuff because
You mean accident, like you were hit by the TV repairman, or?
Well, no, I think the
TV van. They used to have TV vans. We don't anymore.
The first thing I did in electronics, I didn't know anything about electronics, but I had 2 walkie-talkies that were really crappy, and so I decided that I was going to put them together to make one mega walkie-talkie that worked really well. Right. So I basically just cut all the wires and wired them completely in parallel and made this big double walkie-talkie. It's sort of like that, yeah.
Well,
okay, so your thing.
My thing, because this is the theme of our show, and
this
is also how I got turned on to electronics, was one of these things.
Clean her up.
So, but what I had was not quite this one. You started with this one, right? 150?
I did. I had the exact same one.
And I found this easily, but this wasn't quite the one I had because we didn't have 7-segment LEDs. And my first calculator had the 0.1 LEDs that you had to use magnifying bubbles then to see them.
Yeah.
So that size just didn't exist in the consumer back then. But this is how I started. Let me show it to you here.
Oh, yeah.
And you got all your little wires, and you get a schematic, but then you get told what order to just hook them up in, so you don't even have to worry about reading the schematic. And you're not going to hear that. But this is a solar-powered little squelcher thing that's going on right now. So what you're hearing is just a solar cell being used as a voltage source for an oscillator. So both the frequency and amplitude, everything's modulating everything. In fact, I had to leave out one of the electrolytic capacitors. It's probably just too leaky. The big one, you put it across the solar cell, and the solar cell says, I give up. There's more leakage than I can generate. I
think it was actually germanium transistors.
Yep.
This canned ones.
PNPs. And so mine originally had 2 transistors, both PNPs. This has 2 PNPs and an NPN. And I remember when I finally broke one of them, where I figured out I must have blown the emitter base junction.
Well, show them the schematic, because the cool thing about the science fair kits was that you know, you could, they'd show you how to wire together a circuit, and then it would also have a schematic, and you could easily tweak it. You know,
Right.
you could bend it. And
You could figure it out for yourself. And
Yeah.
which it's essentially then, like I said, once I broke one, broke a transistor, and I had to figure out, well, what can I make without it? You know, but then finally figuring out it was broken without a ohm meter. But the thing I wired up that kind of got me the most back then was there was one where it was similar to this. You take a solar cell and the little ferrite antenna, and it would do telemetry. So you could sit there and tell how much sunlight was in the room next to you listening on an AM radio. And that to me was cool. That was kind of the thing that clicked for me then and said, you know, oh, this is, you know, because you learn that something like a ferrite antenna. Let's see if we can get it here. There's a little ferrite bar right here. Mine was flat, but this acts as both a transmitter or a receiver, you know, antenna slug. So you start learning those principles while dealing with this. So my dad got me one of these for about 4th to 5th grade. I think it was 5th grade Christmas. And that was it. That was the start of my electronics career, quite simply. And you and I were talking before the show that we had the parts then. After we stopped using them, we kept the parts and could recognize one years later. Oh, that's from the kit.
Yeah, mine got parted out early because, you know, we lived in a very rural enclave, and there was nothing like a Radio Shack, you know.
There was a black market for 150 and 1 parts.
It was whatever was available in the 150 and 1. It was pretty readily available. My kit, though, I had 151, but it wasn't the first kit. The first kit I had was the Mr. Wizard set, which I brought with me. So, woo! Magic of the video transition. There you go. Getting back.
I don't understand the principle of this, actually.
It's ding 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 ding. I don't know.
Well, if you don't have hair, I could see it keeps your head warmer.
Keeps your head warmer either way. It's the Christmas toque. So okay. So my first kit was the Mr. Wizard's Experiments in Electronics, which
oh no, Mr. Wizard!
You know this.
Oh, wrong.
When this was just an amazing thing. I loved it not only because it was fun, but because of the parts, the way it all went together. I want to switch to
It's kind of like the little bits.
Yeah. Well,
of the day.
The way it went together is it had this metal plate. Where's the sort of the electronics book, and on these little parts they have magnets that hold them to the grounding plate, and this also creates a universal ground. And then there's a symbol on the top for each component that's in each cube, and then where the symbol leads go are contacts which connect to other cubes, and you make up the circuit by just, you know,
right.
by
And they
snapping them
include the
together.
bias resistors so that
They
it's
do, yeah.
more useful right off the bat.
Exactly. And there used to be a lot of, there used to be a lot of modules, but I parted them all out to make other projects. But, this was sort of a mystery. So this is the way they tell you to make circuits in the lectern kit. But,
yeah, you're at the mercy of
right,
cubes.
Right. This is the parts that are available, or like
Talk
this,
about not being in a non-Gaussian space. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a battery compartment.
Euclidean. That's it.
Yeah, you had a battery compartment. You had a little earpiece, so you could do little radio circuits. You had transistors. You had switches. You had lamp holder. You had connectors, and you do simple circuits. But my mom bought this for me. It was in the 5 and Dime. We had this little 5 and Dime called Allen's Variety, and where they sold everything, and it was like the only store in our town. And they sell
What state was that, Tom?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, rural Pennsylvania. But this thing had been on the shelf like all year, and I was just eyeballing it. Like, I didn't know what it was, but it just looks so cool.
Yeah.
All the clear, the clear parts and everything. I didn't know what any of it did, but it just looked really amazing. And so, it ended up under the Christmas tree, and but it turned out to be like the most amazing thing I had ever had. And but like for decades, this thing was a mystery. I didn't know where it came from or who made it. And
other than some kind of wizardry was
yeah,
involved.
there was a wizard involved. This guy, this wizard guy.
Right, and you can tell by looking at big, large cranial space.
Yeah.
Serious look.
Yeah, it was Herbert something.
Yeah.
Herbert something or other.
But kind of that 60s motif going, even though it's the 70s, right?
Well, I put this up on my blog a couple years ago, and so people started emailing me saying that they had these kits too, but they weren't a Mr. Wizard kit. They were a German kit. And it turned out that in the 60s, this was a big deal in Germany. The Egger Braun company, or Egger Bahn company, made this thing called the Electron. And so that's the Electron. I put on the...
Oh, Electron.
Yeah.
I was going to say, they patented the Electron, and we've been...
So this is what the kits looked like in Germany. And apparently Raytheon had gotten the rights to make the kits in America, and they made their own Raytheon Electron version, which was, I guess, made for like college kids.
Right.
And
I was
like
going to say they sold it to the government at $500,000 a box or something.
It was sold a lot to schools apparently, like as an engineering tool, and they made these really elaborate kits that you could get like in wooden like briefcases that were thousands of dollars. I mean, back in those days.
So and they would have added parts so you could make a long wire or something, like, especially the humidity version.
But yeah, apparently they still make this because there's a company that is still selling these Electron kits, so you can buy them. They're very expensive because these modules. I mean, you can imagine the cost of making these, but they are still made. So if you're really hunkering for something like this to put under, your tree or whatnot, they're still havable. So yeah.
Okay, well. So what I've pulled out here is the one I got my son. This is a 501 kit. I mean, it's just we're in the age where why not? You shove as much crap as you can into it. And actually it has 3 books. One for analog, one for digital instruction books, and one for programming this. And let me show you. It comes with little, we call them bit bangers in the old days.
Wow, this is really cool. It's got the antenna, and it's got the...
Yeah, so it's got your solderless breadboard, but it's got a built-in processor, and you can step instructions through it.
It's got the
little keyboard.
LED display.
Got an LED display, and kids these days, they'd rather play a video game, and wouldn't you if you were, So in other words, my son didn't get out of it what I got out of one of these, but we did do some together time, playing with it, and learning to program on it would be interesting, except it's so customized that it's information you would just throw away when you're done. But there's opcodes. You can see the opcodes, XOR, NOT, and stuff like that for the tokens. And you put enough batteries to power a small house on here. And but yeah, it's everything you want. So what I showed him was one schematic was printed wrong, so I got to teach him the look schematics are sometimes wrong thing.
That's which are. Wow.
And in one case the schematic was wrong, so I got to do the hey sometimes schematics are wrong speech to him. And then one time we troubleshot and the battery was backwards. It literally had the plus and the minus come out of it backwards. And I demonstrated it by throwing it away, saying, and that's a bad component sometimes. Well, I wish I'd kept it because people go, oh, a battery shot, I'd like to see that. And, but it had a funny bulge in it and stuff. But the inside had been, the case was upside down on the battery.
The cells were...
The double A, yeah.
So the cells were in the opposite direction.
Yep.
And they'd have the tab, like, on the top, but it was on the negative side.
Yeah, electrons came out of it instead of those holes we were talking.
So that's a very common problem. They were probably storing the battery upside down. All the electrons, that drained out to the other side. I think this is really cool.
Now I used this when because I finally did use a solderless breadboard. So when Jerry Ellsworth and I did a video on phase lock loops, I pulled this out because I had power supply and everything all in one spot.
It's got an antenna and all.
I was gonna say it's got the same basic components except there's a processor in here. Yeah. And not a lot of resistors.
Yeah, that's one thing.
Not a lot of transistors.
And
but
capacitors.
You can play with tones.
You don't have the discrete components.
Yep.
But I guess that's what the
right. Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me that there was it's not here, but there is a whole bag of parts, transistors, chips, 4017s, everything. So it really did. That's why there's 3 manuals with it. So it really did have all the stuff that was in mine. I just, they stick it in here.
But I will grant you that something like this, even though this has everything in it, it's not as straightforward and enticing as the 150-in-1, where every component is just right there, and you know, it's not as
it's not as tedious to get to, and
it's also not as visual to you know, you're not seeing the circuit like just right there in front of you, like, you know, if you're building it from scratch more or less.
Yep. Yeah, you know, I seeing a transistor and then putting your finger on it and hearing some hum, sort of, and you start getting the gain idea. You know, I think touching and everything.
Well, the 151, I learned really how to the basics of circuit design, because you would put together like an oscillator, and then you'd start changing it. You know, you'd find out that if you you know, and almost every time you change it, it would just not work.
You try and hurt the dog, you know, and real high, real low, and it just bop 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 bop. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, it's how you really learn.
So,
but Heathkit. I want to get back to Heathkit because Bill and I, we both have Heathkits that we built way back in the day. So I think I showed in a video, I showed a clock that I built one year, which was my first Heathkit. But after you build your first Heathkit, you know, the big attraction with Heathkit was the test equipment, because there was just so much.
You couldn't afford it otherwise.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you built it yourself as a kit, so you saved a lot of money. But also, Heathkit had like gear that you really couldn't just buy anywhere else unless you really knew.
Especially where to get a FET voltmeter and
you'd
stuff.
have to have industry catalogs or know someone like who'd have like industrial.
Your nearest ham radio guy would be the place I would have learned from.
Right. Well, and they probably point you to the Heathkit.
Probably. Right. But that'd be where you first saw a meter that once warmed up looked very sensitive with the little mirror behind the needle and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, after my first Heathkit, I really just only wanted to buy Heathkit test stuff. So, but this is your Heathkit testing.
Yes. And this came along a little later in life, but this is my grid dip meter.
Put on. Yeah, there we go.
And basically, different size antennas with different number of coils and a frequency range and a color, and you plug it into here, and now you've got a tank circuit, and you can either energize it and inject frequencies and see what happens, or you can take away the energy and receive energy from what you're coupling to. So if there was something else that had a coil, you would closely magnetically couple to it, and you could find it on your gauge here by tuning. So I went around with this thing. Everywhere, just, you know, a TV chassis that's working, and I'd find like where pieces of metal touched and how apertures worked and how something could energize another piece. And, you know, you learn to kind of guesstimate frequencies, because now you're seeing the relationship between the distance and the coil and the strength and everything. And so no, this is my first my first time looking into seeing electrons, seeing the Gaussian ramification.
Okay, so this is there's no selector switch. You just swap out the coil.
Right, using a good old RCA.
So it changes the range, and then you've use the same tuner.
Right.
Is that like a tuning coil? It's a capacitor.
It's a big tuning capacitor, like you're used to seeing using air as the dielectric.
It's an air capacitor, like you have in a tuner.
Right.
So, yeah, that's really cool.
So, yep, and 20, 30 years old, however old I am, 40.
So what year was that?
73, 74, 75 maybe.
Okay.
So, yeah, I got it as you know, because the thing then you learn on electronics, if you weren't around a ham person, was TV sets. And so I had all the kids in my neighborhood trained to drag the TV chassis to my yard. And even would give them, I forget what I give them, but it's like I'd pay them for them, and, you know. And the one kid even knew to put the Zeniths over in the corner, so that was pretty cool.
See, so that's the difference between me and you. In the 70s, you were repairing televisions for kids. I was repairing the Micronauts. So I was
using them for parts.
Yeah.
But that's so then you could back then repair TVs because you needed tubes or a burnout part because of their heat and everything. So yeah, so I started by having a cheap source of parts, and then I could fix TVs and stuff. And what's a Micronaut?
A Micronaut was that was the coolest toy to have in like '77. Everyone had Micronauts. They were these little tiny posable like characters, but they had
we called those GI Joe.
no, but these were small and they were all clear. They were like ruby,
Right.
like ruby red and like they'd be like or like emerald green. They had like these really bright, clear colors and they all had this like switch on the back that they would have an action. They would do some kind of action. Well, they'd break, and I found out that if you opened up a Micronaut, that there's cabling that was holding it all together,
Okay.
and I learned to fix the cabling, and so the kids in the neighborhood learned that
you became the.
I was the Micronaut surgeon. I could a week after the holidays, your Micronaut was like all limp and the arms weren't working anymore. You bring it in, I'd
That part of Christmas may change. Remember, all your toys broke.
Yeah.
And I think they last longer, but I'm counting video games. You might get bored in the same amount of time, but it's not like the wheel comes off as much as it did the old days.
Getting the wheel to fall off was half the fun.
Well, yeah.
And then welding it back. And then you weld it back on with your spin welder.
I was going to say, our economy was based on the fact you needed to buy a new one.
But
so what do you have?
Well, okay, so this was like one of the Heathkit testing things that I got. This was a transistor tester that I built in 1980, and even has the Heathkit manual, and kind of how it would come together. They'd show you how to solder joints,
or glue them.
Or glue them. And you notice it doesn't say
solder.
Must use solder. It just says
right.
make a connection that looks like that.
If you already know enough to do this, well,
exactly.
What if you don't?
So you could really see why someone, if they really didn't know any better. But, it shows you step by step. Put the switches in and put on the hardware.
I see a room full of draftsmen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and the more complicated
probably
kits.
pasting these up on what do they call this? There's a name for when you paste it up on it's not called a blank, but it's a
cut
rush
paste,
or something. There's a name for it. Lots of rubber cement goes into making these things.
Well, yeah. I used to work in copy back in way back in the day, and you used to use wax. It was they had a machine where you would take they'd have one machine that would actually do a photographic print of the text onto a quick developing reverse paper, and so you would set your type using a processor, like it would optically print like with a spinning wheel every letter, and then it would print out the paper like developed, and then you take the paper,
cut it and put it onto
there was this like heated thing with wax and these metal rollers, and you put the paper through it, and it would go through these rollers and it put this thin layer of sticky wax on it, this transparent sticky wax, and then you cut it up, and then you paste it on like the base, and then you can move the copy around and stuff.
Yeah,
that's how they used to do.
And my first job working at a Pennsylvania scale company, designing microprocessor-based scales, but that's how the manuals were made. Is each page was on a copy board, and only he used rubber cement.
Yeah, and I got this one.
Right, let's go to a close-up here.
Yeah, I got this partially disassembled. So, so you tinker together your own Heathkit, and it sort of end up like this. Here's your transistor tester. You see all the amazing hardware in there.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah. So you got 2 C cells and some resistors and a meter, and well, that's pretty much it. So I've got some. That's it.
I don't see any diodes. Just.
Nope. No, I guess using the transistor as
that is the only diode, right?
So it's very simple. I guess it's just a couple loading resistors just for
give it bias, give it on,
and so
load and
a little description there, and a little socket, and you can go NPN, PNP, forward, reverse, high and low beta.
And here even they're showing a PNP. Back in our era, PNPs looked like they would catch on more than NPNs.
Well, yeah, I mean they were more ubiquitous in the 70s, the PNPs. But yeah, NPN. But what did it was NPN was really popular in integrated circuits because it was.
Well, I was going to say at the end of the day, it became about what can you make and what can you. Yeah.
I think it was really TTL based stuff that really made the NPN really take off.
It's just maybe the people liked NPNs better.
Could be. This is another.
But remember, PNP points in is how you tell it.
This is another great thing. This is a Heathkit resistance substitution box, and all it is just a bunch of
resistors.
super big resistors. Those are all they're all 10-watt resistors. So, but it comes in really handy because I've used this for tube stuff, high load, and so but I have used this in pretty much everything that I've ever built. I've plugged that in at some point. So something like this has been, I've used this since 79 maybe.
And I'm usually scrambling for a hand. I never used one, so I would scramble for a handful of parts, and then ultimately the parts would either make it back where they belonged or end up on the floor. And
well, it's got the really big switch, like you were talking about, those big phenolic flat switches, and but it was stuff like this that you would. It was like the robots building robots. You'd get a kit to build an instrument that help you build other kits.
That was the Heathkit way of life.
Well, yeah, it is, and so this is the more advanced.
The ultimate.
The Heathkit multimeter, and this was like the last thing I built, like test equipment wise. But yeah, it would come with these really big instructions about how to put it together. So there's your, parts of real capacitors, like when they were 600
tubular
volt.
And wax and
they're 600. Well, these are 600 volt. Polypropylene. And, so there you go, wiring it up.
Can you see it?
So so you follow the instructions carefully, and if you do everything right, you end up with a working multimeter, which in this case I did not do because. Well,
that's right. You said you sent it.
Because when I opened it up, it has this this sticker in here where it had been worked on. So obviously, when I built it, I didn't get it right, and there was a mistake. And I actually took it into Heathkit shop, and there's one of those grizzly guys, one of those unhappy guys. Fixed it for me. I guess I got
the benefits of living in Pennsylvania, though. You could
so many benefits of living in the middle of nowhere. But they did have a Heathkit. That was something else. So.
Now I built a meter.
Oh yeah.
There's a picture. But something went horribly wrong in mine, and I no longer have the meter itself, but this is the manual that was. Yeah, it was Nixie tubes. I mean, it was a Nixie volt. I mean, that should be the coolest dang thing.
Well, it explains the lethality of it.
Right. That's what I was saying. You're probably looking at me like I got 160 volt shot. But what happened is two things were wrong with this. The board that you mount it by had a bunch of little wires, and so you'd end up shoving it in there and trying to make it level. Well, there was too much wire, so this case never clamped close all the way. Somewhere in there, something else went horribly wrong. The first time I got to use it, I plugged in my plus and minus leads, grabbed hold of them, and I caught the 160, 180 volt Nixie voltage. So had I actually used that on anything, I would have been going around breaking things.
Was it a metal case as well?
Yeah, I'm sure it was, at least one end was something grounding out, but
conductive.
Conductive. And I, I wasn't real meticulous with wire plate. I was cramming it together. I'm a kid. I'm a guy. So but I wish I still had it.
Yeah, I wish
I could clean that up, and and I looked real quickly on eBay, and I didn't see this kind of thing. But
it's really just 2 digits, or did it have?
I thought it was 3. I think there's a digit.
Like a 1 or like a or?
Oh, you know what they used for 1? It might have been 3.5. You know what they used for a 1 was a neon light bulb. Yeah. So it's. I was going to tell you to bring one, but then I realized, one, I should know where mine is, but a neon bulb I'm talking about. But then we got too much to talk about today to digress into neon bulbs.
Too much.
So, I love that thing right up until Try to Kill Me. And then I was a little more chilled on it.
They're. Later on, when I was older, things change, and but in 1982, if you were lucky, naughty and nice and all that stuff, So if you were nearing sainthood, you might actually.
Can't you be both? No,
think most people are. But if you were really fortunate in 1982, you could end up getting like the most awesome thing, like gadget toy of that year, which would be the Zaxxon handheld arcade.
Oh.
Yeah, which is it's just as awesome as it is impossible to play. Yeah, because it's got a multicolored vacuum-fluorescent display with sound. This is actually an astonishing little machine.
Just not
for what it
playable?
is. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've restored it.
Did it ever try to kill you?
Not yet.
Okay, well.
But in 1982,
the day's not over with yet.
So if you were like super good, you might get this. But if you were really, really bad, you would get possibly the worst gift of 1982, which was
a date with Bill Hurd.
No, Zaxxon the board game.
I'm firing my phaser. Rattle, rattle.
Yeah. It captures all of the white-knuckled excitement of the upright arcade in a 2-player board game.
With none of the addictive properties.
And this is legitimate. I mean, this is let's see here.
Oh, okay. Yep, we got that camera on.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's a hexagon, like
yeah. So you got,
quick, the enemy attacks.
So yeah, we got there's your barriers to
a
fly
firewall.
over. Yeah, we got. Oh, here's Zaxxon right there. And so and got fuel tanks.
An attractive 4-color graphics printing.
Yeah. Oh, here's your ship. There's your ship.
The 3-dimensional aspect cannot be ignored. See how it flies above the board level?
And it's got a shadow. See, it's got a shadow there.
Oh, that's cool.
See?
Yeah. Oh, kind of like on the game.
Okay, now ready? We're going to put the quarter in. These are cool little chokes.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why I got it, in case I needed to store some real energy.
Oh, you got like dip package chokes and everything. Really cool. Nothing like a bag of stuff. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Neat. You see that? So, if you've got like a really nerdy kid, all you gotta do is get him a bag full of parts.
Don't call your kid a nerd. Don't do that to your kid.
Don't
have a gifted kid.
Yeah, a special kid.
A special, right?
Yeah.
Who's not in a juvenile home.
Oh, in that case, then I was really special.
Yeah. School didn't know what to do with all my specialness.
I was so special. Yeah.
So, well,
cool.
This has been a blast from the past. It's
ho 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 and all that crap.
Oh yeah. Seriously though, this was like one of the few toys I had that lasted after Christmas was the electronics thing. Middle of the year I'm still using it, and that back then was just whoa. So.
Yeah. And just a note to the Google bot that the music that you're hearing is not the Ventures. Even though I am wearing a Ventures t-shirt, it is actually me. Thank you.
And I can't hear the music, but I'm sure it's very nice.
It's playing. It's playing.
In her head.
It's right there. It's playing.
I hear it.
They can hear it.
I can hear it.
They can hear it.
So, all right. Well, you think we'll do this again, or we had
sure.
enough of this kind of stuff?
We'll do it again.
All right. Send your cards and letters. And I mean, if you're interested. If we're not, we won't do this again.
Yeah, I'll put links in the description for various sites that have to do with some of these toys, and also some other holiday-type toys that we talked about. So,
ho, ho, ho.
Yeah, till next time.
Oh.
Jolly old elves say bye.
Bye.